Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Ripple Intent podcast. Ripple Intent, as many of you know, is a nonprofit organization helping people become better leaders, better teammates, and just all around better people. How you live into your best self. And so, you guys know I get excited about our guests. I always do, but we have a repeat this time. So it's an extra special episode here for one of my favorite topics, which is digging further into trust. And so with just that minimal tee up, I'm going to say, Joseph Myers, welcome back. And if you could, please reintroduce yourself for our listeners.
Sure. And thanks. It's great to be back. And it was surprising to find out it's been over a year since we did this. It seemed like just a few months ago. I guess years do get quicker and days longer. So I've been studying trust since the mid-'80s, back in the 1900s. And we, since then, have discovered through neuroscience that trust and distrust are actually two separate concepts. And trust comes from the prefrontal cortex, which means it's a decision. So we decide to trust. And distrust comes from the amygdala, which is fight, flight, or freeze response. So it's simply, we decide to trust and we feel distrust. And because those are in two separate parts of your brain, they need to be handled separately. It's not like that trust, the more trust you have necessarily means the less distrust. Actually, you can have a lot of distrust and a lot of trust at the exact same time. And so how do I work with that, and how do I figure out what actually guides me to be a more trusting person when it's required? And or what is it that triggers me to distrust? And how can I then figure out how to distrust different?
All right. I got to back up a second because we were just talking about this last night. My wife had a meeting yesterday with somebody that she hadn't met before. They met, and she said when she was telling me about the meeting yesterday that immediately when she met this person, she was like, there's something good about him. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I use that example all the time because she has this like awesome automatic internal intuition about, she can look and feel people across the room and be like, yeah, they're good, or there's something wrong with them. And I'm always like, what are you talking about? This makes no sense to me. But she has this like superpowers. And I remember when I first read your book, I said, hey, check this out. And I read that quote. I said, we decide to trust and we feel distrust. And she's like, mm-hmm. And I'm like, you got to explain that because I have no idea what that means. And she started telling me like, yeah, like this and this and this. And I was like, holy cow. You have it like 100 times better than I do. Is there something wrong with me?
Well, the interesting thing, I think, as the years has gone by, and especially this year since the book has been out, is how many people express exactly what your wife does, and then exactly what you do. Like there's some that have just this high intuition, but what I'm finding out in the data that we're gathering with the new TrustFinder app that I've got, that helps people discover what triggers them to distrust and then what encourages them to trust. So for instance, for me, what really triggers my distrust is control. I want to protect, my amygdala wants to protect that I believe the world's a better place when I'm in control. And so many, many times when I am triggered, it's because I'm losing control or someone's trying to take control. I perceive that, or I perceive that someone actually thinks I'm in control, but I'm doing a really bad job of it. So any of those perceptions really just sets me off. But what I found is that what encourages me to trust is recognition, courage, and innovation. So whenever I see innovation in the room or in a person, I automatically start intuitively trusting them.
Wait a second. So you, you choose that or that? So, okay, wait. I got like a million questions floating around here. So back up. The first is you wrote the book called Trust Me. Let's make sure that's out there. So you wrote this book called Trust Me, and it talked about the brain science, it talked about the guard dogs and the guide dogs. It talked about what we just said, how you feel distrust and you choose to trust. Since you wrote the book, you built an app, you built a program that you worked with some of our folks with, and then you've worked with obviously lots of other people with. And so what is that app? What does it do? And what are you learning?
Yeah, so the app, like I said, it helps, it guides individuals and teams through trying to figure out, number one, on the distrust side, what triggers their amygdala. What is it that their amygdala is trying to keep safe? That's the important part. What am I trying to keep safe about who I believe I am? Because that's all the amygdala is there to do, is keep you safe.
So when you say the control thing, when someone else is trying to be in control, your amygdala is going off saying, you're losing control, this other person's taking control, danger.
Danger, danger, danger. Yeah. So I go into fight, flight, freeze response. And for me, particularly, I'm more of a fighter than a flee and fight or freeze. So I can get pretty bullyish.
I remember your story, the person on the plane who was messing with your air above your seat, and you were getting pretty irritated with this. Like, wait a minute, this is my little area of control in the airplane is the little tiny air vent above my seat, and someone had the nerve to touch mine.
Exactly. And what's interesting about that is when I tell that story, other people walk up and go, oh, they weren't trying to control you. They just didn't respect you. I'm like, oh, so your trigger is respect. or somebody's like, no one's trying to control or respect you. They're actually trying to help someone else. And I'm like, oh, so you see that as a trust thing because you're empathetic for other people. Empathy is not on my high list of Clifton strengths. I think it's in the 30s. So,
which is as low as it can go.
As low as it can go.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that's helpful. So your app is helping people unpack or actually uncover what's naturally causing them to feel distrust of somebody else.
Yes. And then but because we narrow that down to one word, that allows us, because the amygdala is so powerful and so quick, it allows them to press pause on that amygdala reaction. Because as soon as I have, and you can't do it with a process, you can't do it with multiple words, the amygdala is just way too quick. And so if I can catch myself as my amygdala juices are starting to kind of ferment, if I can say to myself and catch it and say control, what that does is the amygdala doesn't handle language. So it has to rely on another part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, to actually understand why I just said control. That means that just press pause on that reaction. So the brain science is, I just need to do something that will stop it for at least a second. So people are figuring out. So here's the other thing. The more and more I work with people about this, the more I believe this is true, that trust and distrust are very individual decisions and feelings. So not that I'm saying anything bad about other formulaic kinds of trust frameworks. But trust is not, let me say it this way, because we'll talk about this maybe in a minute. Trust is a predicament. It's not a problem to be solved. So you can't do accountability plus transparency plus this equals trust. Because individuals do that separately. They do that. All three of us will have separate things that encourage us to trust. And we have separate things that encourage us to distrust. And so to have some kind of formulaic thing that that you give to your team and say, what we need to do in this team is have more accountability and more transparency and more this and more that. What I'm finding is that people don't find that all that helpful. But when they figure out that, what encourages me is innovation and courage and recognition. And when those things are in the room, I actually automatically start trusting. Now,
so is that like you're when you're around people who see the world or do they're similar to you? That's where like, oh, I fit, or this team is gelling. It's like, because we're all kind of similar in some ways. We value some of the same stuff, even though we haven't articulated it. Is that kind of a accidental way to make trust happen?
I think that's a part of it, sure. But I think people who are totally different, even if I see that they're trying to be courageous, I'll automatically come beside them and like, heck yes, let's do that. No fear kind of thing. Or if I see that they're trying some kind of new innovation, even if I don't agree with that innovation, I still trust their efforts because they're trying to be innovative.
So with going through the process with the app, right? We're giving ourselves some language to help identify, right, the trust triggers or the distrust triggers.
Yes.
And then in the team, I have to be a little vulnerable, but I can communicate that. And that process will then allow everyone to recognize, hey, this is what Joseph needs in order. If I want trust, I'm going to have to do this with Joseph.
Right. And we can start selecting specific words that would encourage our team members to trust us. Because
wait a second. Wait. That's like, I'm just playing back some like that's like super advanced level what you just described, John, because I think most people are like, it's all about me. I really don't care what Joseph needs for me to trust him. I want to know that he's going to do what I need for me to trust him.
Yeah, you could just reverse that.
Well, I'm just saying people are mostly self-centered by nature. That's what I'm really saying.
That's fine, Kyle. I accept your self-centeredness.
Absolutely. It's called self-assuredness.
Sure, right? If I really want to have trust with someone, then how are they supposed to know what I need? And
they should figure it out.
Find a way to communicate it. Yeah, good luck with that. How's that work for you so far?
I mean, but think about all the different groups that come together. If you don't have history and you don't know each other, there's some people who do. Some people are cliquish. I mean, some people have those relationships. Some people don't. We just kind of, well, what's the natural reaction? The usual course, let's do an icebreaker. And so now that I know that you like this kind of pizza and he likes that kind of pizza, and now we have trust. It's like that. It just kind of happens. And then we start working. And we hope through the course of work that people do what we expect them to do in order for us to then trust them. Or we just trust them until they lose that trust. Those are kind of the two options, right? I'm like, hey, everyone's awesome. I trust y'all until you screw up. And then everybody else, the other half of the world is like, let's see if you can dance, monkey boy, and then I'll decide to trust you. So, and we usually don't put that on our name badge. It's not like, hello, my name is Kyle, and by the way, I trust you from the get-go, or you have to earn my trust. So people are kind of figuring it out as we go. So that's where I'm saying it's like, let's focus on the self for a minute, because we are a bit self-centered in the way that we make people, I say make, that's probably a wrong word, but the way we make people earn our trust is the right way. And we expect everyone else to do the same thing. So yeah, when we're jumping that far to go, I'm going to look around the room and see what you all need from me. It's like, man, that's like level 17. We're like at level 1.
Yeah, and I think that discovering and sharing those things. So, for instance, I'm working with a team right now. The lead of that team, the leader, has trouble with one specific person on the team and could not figure out how to communicate in a way that team member would trust them. It was very obvious. The team member did not trust the leader at all. So we went through the app. We figured out that this team member, one of his key words for trust is insight. Now just listen to the very interesting twist we took on this. So I said to the leader, I said, so how do you ask him for his thoughts? And he just says, well, I walk up and I said, so what are you thinking? What do you think about this? Well, this person actually has about 1 billion thoughts in his head at one time. And so he automatically shuts down when given such a general, well, what are your thoughts about this? So I said to him, all I want you to do is just change one little phrase. I want you to ask him, hey, can you give me your best insight on this? As soon as he did, that person started trusting him more and more.
Is that person an engineer?
Yes.
I was going to say, wait, you've been talking with Mikey?
Yes, this happens to be an office of engineers.
I mean, not the stereotypes aside, for people who spend that amount of time in their head, processing, thinking, reflecting, processing, taking in information, it totally makes sense. And yes, stereotype engineers, but there's a lot of people who do that. And,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter what role you're in, but it's fascinating to see that. So you had that person go through the application. It produced a trigger, being the word insight. Is that the right way to put it?
Yeah, so I would say it's a encouraging trigger for people. So they get 3 for trust and 1 for distrust.
So that person learned about himself that he values himself, he values insights, and he appreciates other people who ask him specifically for a deep, well thought out idea, output, process, a statement. When it's phrased that way, it's not like, hey, what are you thinking? Like, well, I'm thinking 1 billion things. Do you have 6 days and we can talk about them all? That's almost, that comes across to him as very disrespectful.
Yes, that's right. And so it triggers him to distrust because he's like, he doesn't know me. He doesn't really care what I think. If he did, he'd ask me for my insights. He wouldn't ask me for all 1 billion things I'm thinking. So it's really nuanced, but at the same time, it really helps individuals communicate with individuals.
I think there's a lot of power in that because, normally we just rely on everyone to intuit whatever we all need, right? And so that's a crapshoot because some of us are terrible with intuition. I have to rely on Kyle's self-assurance to know what's happening there. And then I start questioning the self-assurance and I'm like, yeah, it's bullshit. But anyway, right?
Me too, but it sounds really confident.
It does.
It slowly sounds super confident. And I'm like, oh, I trust it because you sound really confident. And I wish I could be more confident. But anyway, right? So you go through and you intuit, and we're wrong a lot of the time, and we're making mistakes a lot of the time. So I love this idea of, especially your in-office team that you work with all the time.
Yes.
Right? When you go and you have short-term engagements with other groups of people, this is a great application, but it's a different dynamic, right? And so this in-office group is essentially your work family.
Yeah.
And has its own set of, throwing family in there has its own set of triggers. But,
another 3-part podcast series.
Like, should we be talking about this?
Tell me about your mother.
So giving each other language to share with each other, I think that's amazing. That's an excellent way to start, either reinforcing the trust you've built or working to break down some of the barriers.
Yeah, and like for me, one of the things that my wife has learned about me through this whole process is she'll come to me and she'll say, I know this is going to sound like, and you might perceive this as I'm saying you're doing a really bad job at leading this part of our family, but I'm not. And so it helps my amygdala be put at rest and not get triggered over what she's about to say, because she's just recognized, hey, this might sound like this, but I don't mean it that way. And so when we can go to someone in a work environment and go, I know that this might sound like I'm trying to do this, but I'm not really. What I'm trying to do is this, but I don't know how to say it in a way that doesn't produce the other feeling. So can we put that aside for a second? And people are like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, it's a little context setting.
Yeah.
It's like, I know you're going to take this the wrong way.
Yeah. Right. But being more specific
So don't.
Right. But being more specific about it helps us recognize that person actually knows me and knows that I have a problem with control for me. And so they're being kind instead of just going, don't take this the wrong way, but you're an idiot.
I'm glad you teed it up that way. No, that makes total. You got any other examples? Like the one with the gentleman with the insight is very, very practical. Is there another one that comes to mind off the top of your head?
Put me on the spot here. I don't necessarily have. I mean, working, and unfortunately, this is another engineer, but so working with another person who has been in counseling and therapy with his significant other for several years. This came out after our time together. And he's like, so I didn't realize it, but I get triggered like this. And I get encouraged to trust when someone, what is his word? It just left me the specific words. But basically, when someone believes that he is heroic. When his wife found that out and knew that if she would use heroic language with him, he actually began to trust her like he never had before. She didn't have the language to tell him how heroic she thought he was in everyday life and in their marriage, and by taking on this therapy and by moving to a different state for her job, and she just never had expressed it in heroic terms. You know, she had said thank you, but sometimes that's not enough. And it just changed their marriage.
Okay. I mean, can people take the assessment?
Yeah, so the tool is built for coaches and consultants to use with teams and people that are trying to help. It really isn't a self-led kind of assessment. It really takes, in my opinion, it takes someone to help you walk through. For instance, trying to pick your word that represents what your amygdala is trying to keep safe is not overly easy. Now the app gives you choices, and says, hey, because of all your responses, here are 10 choices. And it also gives you a write-in. But because when I say that that's a distrust trigger word, a lot of people think, that it must be a bad thing. And so you have to be reminded, no, this is a good thing. It's a good thing that your amygdala is trying to keep you safe. It's a good thing that it's this one word, but let's try to get to the core of that. And then a lot of people need help peeling away the onion. They pick a word up here that really, if at the core of it, they mean something much deeper. So for me, I wanted this to be for consultants and coaches to use to help their client.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, this trust is a very complex topic. And to walk through and get to that application that you're talking, well, not even application yet, but even this is just self-awareness and understanding of yourself, what activities, what behaviors, what words trigger you both on the trusting and the distrusting side. That I could see that really being beneficial to work with a guide to get through that. Let's talk about what you've done then since, because you when you've worked with teams, you work with groups, you work with firms, and everybody goes through this. You get this out there. You you then help them both in the preparation of trust, and then of course when the pressure gets applied, and you've boiled that down to, well, what I heard you describe was 3 Ps.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that started becoming very, very obvious is that during what I called game day situations, when the things get really tense in a project or whatever, usually people trust leaders who know how to take care of the task in front of them. They know how to tackle. And what I found specifically, we're going to pick on engineers today, I guess, specifically in firms where there's a lot of things in the head and not a lot overly communicative, what happens is people are triggered to start distrusting really, really quickly because they feel like that the thing that they're trying to tackle isn't going to be taken care of the way it should or the way it could be. Well, then I started looking at how leaders tackle things like this, and I came up with there's a problem with problems. And engineers really have a problem with problems because they want to solve everything with an equation. So a problem is something that can be solved with an equation. This plus this plus this, or if I do this, this, and this, I'll get to the solution. The problem is not all things can be solved like that. So then...
Whoa, hang on. Let's let the few people listening to this pick themselves off the floor, because they're like, everything can be solved with an equation.
Good luck with that. Like, I believe that most people try to solve the trust issues they have with an equation.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. It's black and... I mean, I've heard it referenced so many times, the whole trust bank thing. That's it. Let's just we're going to oversimplify trust and just say, keep doing trusting things, fill up my bank, and then when you distrust me or do something that causes me to not trust you anymore, the bank account is wiped out and you have to start over.
Yeah.
And it's like,
trust doesn't...
that's a cool cartoon analogy, but in life that doesn't actually apply. Because if that were the case, and I'll use your example, if that were the case, you would have not trusted your parents for 5 years once you found out that Santa Claus wasn't real.
Exactly.
What?
Sorry, all of you under the age of 8 who are listening to this.
So it overly simplifies and actually doesn't make it. On the surface, it makes sense, but in practice, it is much more complicated than that. So yeah, not every problem can be, or not every situation can be solved with an equation.
Yes. So, like for instance, trust. A lot of people will say, well, if you have transparency plus accountability plus yada yada plus yada yada, you're going to build trust on your team. That's just a bunch of bull. It sounds, like you said, it sounds really nice.
I got to go delete all my memes, right? Man. You're burning me out. You're making me sad this morning.
But trust is more individual than that. It's experienced and felt more individualistically than that. It's decided on more as an individual than as this generic thing. So we have problems that are solvable through an equation. Then we have predicaments, which are unsolvable problems. All of us know what those are and can be. We have to work with people we don't like. It's an unsolvable problem. You just have to learn how to go through that. Unsolvable problems, the way that you tackle those is with new practices. So problems are solved with equations. Predicaments are solved, quote unquote. They're not really solved, but they're lived through new practices. So I always give the example of someone who's an alcoholic. They find themselves into an AA meeting. They look at the 12 steps, and if you're a newbie, what you normally do is you go, oh my gosh, if I do step 1 plus step 2 plus step 3 plus step 4, all the way to 12, I'm going to be just like everyone in this room, and I'm going to be clean for 20 years. You quickly get hit in the head, and you realize this is not an equation. These are 12 new practices that you have to practice on a daily basis to keep sober. and it's day by day. So it's an unsolvable problem. You're not going to get rid of your addictive form of behavior.
Compare your process there for AA with some of the people I got to work with, and man, the AA one seems a lot easier.
Right.
Because at least you have 12 practices that have been laid out where if you continually to invest in these, time, energy, effort, your chances of success are much higher. I don't have that guidebook for some of the jerks that I have to work with.
Well, it's one of the things that I tell people with the app. If you practice knowing your distrust trigger word and saying that to yourself as your amygdala juices get going, and practice that over and over again, it's not an equation, it's a practice. Or if you practice looking for your 3 trust words in a situation that normally isn't trustworthy, you will start the brain loves to find connection. That's what it's there for, right? The prefrontal cortex loves connection. So if you give it 3 things to look for, it will. So those are practices. It's not a solution.
So if I keep saying my distrust trigger over and over to myself, then am I just going to sit there and go, dang it, it's like I see the distrust everywhere.
So no, what I'm proposing is that when your amygdala gets hijacked, mm-hmm. and you start really smoke starts coming out of John's ears, that you use that one word to help press pause on the amygdala.
So when we did this back, almost a year now ago, I remember one of the ones that, and I had to chew on it for a while because we did it real time. You did it with a couple hundred people and we did it real time. And I couldn't land on something. And what I did find a few weeks later was the word surprise for me kept coming up over and over and over. And so what I saw, and what I still do to this day, is when I get surprised by a new policy, a new practice, a new decision, we're doing this now, just something that we haven't, that is basically forced on me. It's not necessarily the control piece. It's more of, hey, surprise, your team and your world is going to be impacted. And I didn't have a voice in helping formulate or awareness of that. Then I usually go dark pretty quick. How is this going to hurt? How is this going to harm? This is wrong. This is bad. And since we went through that, what I found, at least for myself, was I say, am I being surprised? And that has helped me calm down.
Yeah.
So when you say the amygdala juices are flowing, I mean, I could feel it. I could get tense. I could get not irate, but I could get irritated. I could get frustrated. I mean, the audible sighs and what the hell is this? And, it's like, wait a minute, surprise, surprise, surprise. Is this actually, am I being surprised? Is that what's happening here? Okay. Just that has helped. I don't want to say calm, but it's helped, like you said, catch that amygdala midstream and just be like, it doesn't mean that my self-protection isn't warranted. It means that the way I'm reacting right now is way driven by protectionist behavior, i.e. the amygdala, and not the prefrontal cortex.
That's exactly it. And what you're feeling, as far as the brain science is concerned, is when you give your amygdala kudos for protecting you. So what you're doing is, hey, is this surprise? You're recognizing it. And you're not saying to your amygdala, please shut down because you're an idiot. You're saying, hey, I recognize that this surprise actually might not be good. So it's basically what I call distrust differently. We're not trying to get rid of distrust ever. We're just trying to get you to do your reaction different.
Since we had I know a couple times this has come up where, we still have that reaction whenever we see an email from a certain specific individual per se on a team. And everyone goes, oh my God, what's this crap going to be? Here we go again. I mean, everyone has the same reaction. Are we bad people because we don't go, hey, maybe this time it's going to be good?
No, it's your amygdala needs to be there to protect you because it could be bad. So it's not bad or good. It's what are you going to do with that information? What are you training your brain to do with it? And it's okay to get triggered. It's not okay to react without some kind of thought. Unless, of course, someone's coming at you with a knife or a bear is about to attack you, since I live in Montana, it's okay not to have a thought process about that.
If the bear's coming at you with a knife, then you got all kinds of issues.
Well, it does happen.
So hey, we're
surprise.
This is bad. So hey, we're almost out of time, but I want to make sure we get through all the P's. So we talked about problems. We talked about, you mentioned predicament.
Yeah, and the third one is puzzle, and so that has to do with alignment. So once when you're trying to solve a puzzle, it's getting those pieces in alignment so that the picture or the solution emerges. And so a lot of teams, and just know that all three of these can be wrapped up in the same thing you're trying to tackle. It could be a problem, and it could be a predicament, and it could be a puzzle all at the same time. And so, but it takes three different tools to think through each part of what you're trying to tackle. So there are parts of this that I can solve with an equation. Yay. There's a part of this that's just unsolvable. So what are the practices me and my team have to do to get us through this? And then what are the alignment issues? What are the things I need to get in alignment so that everyone starts seeing the picture that will emerge? And that will bring about a solution. And when a leader actually starts doing a practice like this, using the 3 Ps or whatever they use, a good framework, their team starts trusting that they can actually handle the task at hand. All of a sudden, they're like, oh, because all of us know that if you try to solve a predicament with an equation, it just gets worse. And all of us know people who try to do that over and over and over again and make the situation worse and worse and worse and worse. It's like, no, quit using that tool to try to solve this thing. It's not working.
I remember someone said many years ago, you can't project manage your family. And as you're describing a predicament with a problem approach, that's pretty much it.
That's it. That's right. I mean, there's some things in your family that you can solve with the project management mindset.
Sure. But if you try all of the problems, put them all in that same box, absolutely. Yeah. These are the moments and the days where I'm grateful that we only have boys, because most of them are just problems. A few predicaments, not very many puzzles.
Yeah, exactly. They're not old enough yet.
Right.
It's coming. It's coming.
I mean, I'm reflecting on this with, my team, and the more that you talk about it, Joseph, I see them showing up, right? All three different elements. And then, right, where have we applied it? So I kind of think, I like this idea that this is sort of an invitation, right? You can go on as business as usual and keep banging your head against the wall and, continue to be frustrated, feel the lack of trust continuously, and your distrust triggers are just constant, right? Or you're lucky, right? Maybe you're lucky.
Yeah.
But why rely on luck when you could actually put some of this into practice and be a little bit more thoughtful about how you go about it? And even my team, we have a lot of we're very connected. We've really focused hard on that. However, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's still a predicament. Or, yeah, we're going to have to spend some time really focusing on some energy on this piece or that piece to really peel it apart and move us forward in a direction where we're doing a better job taking care of each other.
Right.
I love the framework.
Thanks, John. Well, it's interesting how many clients I have now that begin a project with their team, and they put those three things on the board and they say, okay, what of this is a problem that we can solve? What are the predicaments that are ahead of us? And what are the puzzle pieces that we need to get aligned? And taking that framework and dividing that out allows your team to start trusting you as a leader more and more.
It sounds like you have to be careful so that you're not saying, well, Kyle is our predicament
Right.
and we're not going to fix him.
I don't know. Maybe it depends on the team. I think depending on the team, that might actually be 100% appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, teams always have kind of their problem child. So
or children.
What are we going to do?
But not making it so focused and personal, but like you said, you can if you have the right situational awareness, and it does make sense to articulate it that way, and it could be fun. You don't wait till game day. Obviously, you want to do it in practice. And so even in practice, go, hey, between all of us and our dynamic, what are our problems? What are our puzzles? What are our predicaments as people?
Yes.
And maybe start external and say, okay, for the people that we have to interact with on this particular activity, whatever it may be, and where is it? And then turn it internal.
Yeah.
What about us?
Right.
And again, a little bit lighthearted, but also very intentional where, if you can get the conversation like we started with about the guy who said, what's on your mind, as opposed to give me a well thought out insight that you have, if you can, I'd say joke, but again, lighthearted conversation around what are the things that really set you off when I say things or when we say things to each other, as opposed to how would you like that to be said?
Yes.
Then you're talking application. And actually seeking what's a better way for me to interact with you, because the way I interact with you is right, of course, but it may not be what you need.
Yes.
Which goes all the way back, John, to where you started, which was very level 17 of let's take that external focus and what can I do to help all those around me.
Yeah, and it's refreshing, I think, when teams can do this, like you said, in a lighthearted way on the practice field before the game day starts really getting the juices rolling.
It's awesome.
So,
it's good stuff, Joseph.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I need to process more of this, as well, right? This is amazing. But so for everyone out there, Joseph, who wants to learn more, how do we get a hold of you?
There's a couple of ways you can. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I haven't been this month, but I will be. And so just look me up at Joseph Myers. And then my email is Joseph at TrustXDistrust.com. So basically, trust by distrust. Only the X replaces the
Joseph at TrustXDistrust.com.
Right.
Love it. And if you haven't gotten the book, trust me, go out there and get it wherever you get your books.
Thanks. Yep, it's out there.
Awesome. Thank you again for being here. I love having conversations with you. Listeners, if you want to get a hold of Kyle or I, we're on LinkedIn. Reach out to us. Come to a Ripple Intent event in your neighborhood. We're all over the country and would love to engage with you. You can find out more on our events page at rippleintent.org. And with that, we'll see you next time.